Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of UPressPlay Sports. I'm your host, Richard Pereira, and joining me today is sports editor Cameron Priester and staff writer Zachary Watts. Hey guys, how's it been going? I know it's been quite a while since our last episode, over a month from now. A lot of stuff has happened since then, from FEU basketball, baseball, and then most recently spring football. But it's been a very enjoyable month since the last time we talked for our podcast. So, how have you guys been doing since then?
Overall, pretty well. A lot of things to talk about within the sports world, specifically within FAU. Basketball team set a huge precedent for, I think, the rest of athletics here at FAU. So we have some expectations to reach, but we'll kind of get into those expectations a little later on. But overall, couldn't be more excited to be back.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to be back. A lot of stuff been going on. It's been a really busy month for myself and kind of probably all of you with everything that's been going on. But it's been great. I'm excited to get back together with you guys and talk about it. So ready.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll first start off with FU basketball. We won't give an essay version of what happened throughout their tournament run. We'll just give you guys the Cliff Notes version. So essentially, they won the Conference USA tournament and going into the NCAA tournament, took on their future AAC opponent in Memphis, won that game in a buzzer beater from Nicholas Boyd, took down the Cinderella team in FDU, who took down Purdue in the first round, being the second 16 seed in history to upset a 1 seed. And after that, just taking down Tennessee, locking them down, and then upsetting Kansas State in the Elite Eight in New York, in Madison Square Garden, and then moving on to Houston to play in the Final Four, which unfortunately resulted in their season ending in a buzzer beater. Quite ironic considering how they started their tournament on a buzzer beating game winner. So it's ironic, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this year was incredible from FEU, finishing with a 35-4 record, 18-2 conference play, and getting just a missed field goal away from reaching the championship game of March Madness, to where they would have faced UConn in that scenario. So it does. So yeah, again, incredible season from FEU basketball. I am happy that I got the opportunity to go to Houston myself to watch them in person and talk to the players and coach at post game. Even though it was a heartbreaking defeat, it doesn't take away from the fact that it was an incredible experience just being at Houston and seeing what March Madness, how it brings everybody from these schools, from these programs together. And Cameron, I know you have a lot to say considering that you went to Columbus, New York, and then Houston. So I want to know your thoughts on how it was like seeing this team go all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, I'll kind of take it first off that. I I don't even know where to start though because there's like so many different things with this team. It was such an amazing run, but I'll start by just saying how blessed I was to be able to go to all five of those games. It was the coolest thing I've ever done. Being like right there on the court, like you said, like the Knicks last second basket against Memphis, like right in front of me. It was just like the coolest month of my life, and I'm so grateful. Um, about basketball though, I'll kind of just start to like kind of towards the end. Um, that San Diego State game, man, that was brutal. That no matter how fun the ride was, didn't make that any less heartbreaking. And kind of that last second possession, you kind of wish they could have drawn up a better play than they did. It was kind of just John L playing iso ball with everybody else kind of around the arc. Um, and then he just laces that jump shot. That was a beautiful shot. That's going in 10 times out of 10. He was so composed bringing the ball down the floor, even with Nick right in his face. Beautiful shot. That's basketball. You got to live with that. It was brutal, though. But probably for about 10 minutes, I'd say it was, up until that post-game conference, which, Rich, you were there, the way they handled themselves was amazing. That's the most heartbreaking way to end in probably all of sports. And the way they kind of just, I don't want to say they seemed like they didn't it didn't bother them, but all they could talk about in the post game was next season, like, oh, we're running it back. And that we kind of have some talk about with John L and Elijah, but that seems kind of be what the nature is. They've re-signed Dusty for 10 years. Um, most of the roster, depending on what happens with them in the draft, should be back. So as heartbreaking as it was, it's you can't be anything but excited for next season. Because with Dusty back and presumably a good chunk of the roster, there's a good chance we could be right. We talk about this stuff again next season. So it was awesome. It sucked to end, but can't be excited. But can't be nothing but excited.
Yeah, just kind of building on what Cameron said, kind of how it ended, it does leave a bad taste in your mouth. It's not how you really want things to end, but hindsight's always 2020. You can always look back on things and think of a better way to do it. But overall, I don't think as an FAU student or someone within the FAU community, you couldn't be any more prouder of this team and what they accomplished overall throughout the season. I mean, even going into the tournament, you get put as a 9 seed, you feel heavily disrespected by the committee. You feel that your draw was a bit tougher than most. You're in one of the toughest divisions in the entire tournament, being in the East. Our journey to that Final Four game, we beat teams that everyone had predicted we were going to get blown out by. Every power ranking I saw had us in dead last. There was just a blatant disrespect towards the guys all around, and Dusty and the team overall just did such a good job of not having to prove it to anyone else, but just proving to themselves that they were a 33 win team for a season. We ended up at 35, but we have the most wins in college basketball for a reason. We play at that level because we've set that precedent. And I was kind of happy that they weren't down on themselves. They were looking forward to next year because out of your core, you only lose Forrester, which he's a big guy to lose, especially for those clutch free throws he had in the tournament. So it's always going to lose. It's always tough to lose a guy like that, but just to have such a young core that you can build around. And I know John L and Elijah are testing their abilities and entering the draft, and I have nothing but respect for them because, there's no knock to it. You don't lose eligibility. So even if they don't get picked up, which I think teams are missing out if they don't at least take the risk on either of those guys. But, if they do come back, they'll realize what they have to improve on in order to get that shot at the next level. So nothing but respect to those guys. But I am looking forward to next year. I was completely on board with them. We re-signed Dusty for the long term, which is exactly what you need. You have plenty of funding to put back into the program to kind of build up for the years moving forward. And, you're moving into a tougher conference with some of your rivals following you as well. So, there's a great path ahead for not only the team, but the future of basketball at FAU. There's just so much to look forward to. And I'm glad that these guys didn't hang their head on a buzzer beating shot that could have sent them to the national championship game. They're just so optimistic. And I think that's a credit to Dusty, just kind of putting the faith in these guys that, one bad game doesn't define who you are. So nothing but respect to them. And I'm just as excited to see how far they can take it next year.
Yeah, definitely. And until they return to March Madness and reach the championship game someday, this will forever go down as the greatest season in FU history. I don't think there's any argument to this. 35-4, 18-2 conference play, going perfect in the Conference USA tournament, which will be their last in Conference USA as they head into the American for the 2023-24 campaign, and then just going all the way. And the only game they were really favored in during March Madness was against FDU, which is kind of expected because they are the 16th seed for a reason. But it just really goes to show that this team was really talented, and that's all thanks to head coach Dusty May and his coaching staff for building this team together throughout the course of 5 years, starting with Michael Forrest and then building that up with Janelle Davis, Elijah Martin, Vlad Golden, and everybody else. Brandon Weatherspoon as an honorable mention. And then, of course, it really sucks to see Michael Forrest end his career on that buzzer beating loss, as we see him just being emotional when that buzzer beating went in, just crying, knowing that, in tears, knowing that his career is done thanks to that shot. It could have been great to see him play one more game in the championship game, but sometimes it just doesn't go that way sometimes. And it will be the only significant loss. And FE will definitely miss him thanks to his clutch 3-pointers against Tennessee and then his clutch free throws against Kansas State. That will never be forgotten. He did what he needed to do to bring FEU to the Final Four, and will never forget that from him, and he will definitely be honored for his 5 years he spent with playing for the Owls, and of course head coach Dusty May, who was Coach May's first recruit since he became head coach. So proud of FEU for their incredible season. Hopefully they can bring everybody back. Hopefully Elijah Moore and Janelle Davis. Best of luck to them with their testing the NBA draft. But if they come back, this FEU squad will be a team to fear in the American. And moving on from FEU basketball, we head on to FEU baseball. It's been quite a while since we talked about baseball since our hiatus, but it's been really an up and down turf. Like, they had their sweep against Harvard and they dominated Bradley, and then they had some series sweep defeats against UTSA and most recently Dallas Baptist, who is which is a very good baseball program. So, and they did have some wins against Florida Gulf Coast twice, who are nationally ranked in the national rankings, and then getting a series victory over FIU and Rice, and then late at near the end of March beating UCF to win the season series, which is always great to have a flex on your in-state rivals. But they are on a losing curve, having lost 3 straight to Dallas Baptist, and now are heading into one of their toughest matchups of the season with Miami, who they have beaten earlier in the season at home earlier in late February. But this time Miami's coming into this game ranked 17th in the country. So FEU will be taking on Miami Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. at home. So I want to know your guys' thoughts FEU's chances against Miami, considering they do have considering FEU is right now a 22-15 team with a 7-8 record in conference play.
Yeah, so the one thing I kind of taken away thus far in the season is we're very streaky at times. We'll go through series sweeps and then turn around and get swept 2 series in a row. Like, I know it's part of baseball, you have your hot and cold streaks, things happen, but what you kind of want to see is even though you may have gotten beaten in the series, you want to at least take a game away from a team. Not only does it help in record, but just that morale of knowing that, like, all right, we at least took one, like we just didn't have things go our way. But the common trend that I'm seeing is the days that the offense picks it up is also the days that pitching picks it up, and vice versa. When the bats aren't hot, pitching's also not hot. So, you have these crushing defeats by 5 or more runs, and then when you're winning comfortably. So it's kind of hard to get a feel for just a balance on the team. Shanuel has been unbelievable all year long. There's a multitude of guys on that team that have also performed well, but he's a Golden Spikes watch list player for a reason. He's consistently coming to the plate for the Owls and coming through time and time again. So he'll be a huge factor if we want to make a super regional run later in the year. As of now, though, you just kind of want to see guys pick each other up. If the bats aren't hot one day, you kind of want to see the pitching kind of back them up, and hopefully they can scrape by a run or two to pick up those close win games. Because, as the year goes on, what determines success in playoff baseball is can you grit out a win? Can you find a way to fight, scratch, claw, whatever analogy you want to use, just earn that win the hardest way possible. And it seems like now we're having a tough time really putting those things together. But, there's still time to figure it out. Baseball, we have these long seasons for a reason. They're going to have plenty of opportunities to figure things out, not only within themselves, but also against their opponents. So, I just think you take it a day at a time. Don't think too much. We have Coach McCormick, who has 500 wins under his belt. He knows what it takes to win. He's been there before. So I trust in him to put these guys on the right track. But it's just trusting the system you're put in. Trust the guys you put in these spots to come through for you, and just abide by that. Don't try to overthink it. Don't abandon on the plan you have. But things aren't going the best for us, but it could be worse. We're still above 500. We still have a chance to make a run in conference play. So just take it how it is, day at a time.
Yeah, no, before I talk about anything baseball, I'm going to just say Nolan Shanwell is a stud. Yeah, absolute stud. He's squaring every ball up. He's crushing every ball. I want to say he's 3rd in the country in batting average right now, and the 2 guys ahead of him have like 15 less at-bats than he does. He's just crushing everything. I want to say he's got 14 home runs. Just great start to the season from him. But like kind of Zach said, not everything is all roses at the moment, especially when you just get swept in a conference series. Looking at that game, I first of all, the bullpen kind of, as a whole, kind of struggled. Anybody they kind of threw out there, Dallas Baptist, they just kind of were seeing where they were put it, and they were able to put some hits together no matter what FAU kind of threw at them. And then the other kind of thing was moving runners over. They have no problem, or had no problem this series, getting runners on base. It was just moving those runners over. They just could not seem to like string together hits in the same way that Dallas Baptist was. In game one, I want to say they stranded 14 runners across the entire night, which you're not going to win many games like that. And then this game two on Saturday night, they had like a 7-inning scoreless drought, and in that, I want to say they had runners in scoring positions 5 times. You have to figure out ways to move those runners over, whether that's stringing together base hits or getting aggressive on the base pads with advancing on steals and pass balls. They've got to figure out ways to move runners over. But it's not all bad. They have plenty of guys, like we said. Nolan Shanywell's crushing the ball. Mitchell Hardigan's hitting really good. He had plenty of base hits and I want to say a pair of doubles against Dallas Baptist. But yeah, they just kind of have to, like Zach said, not be as streaky and put it together for more than just one series. But it's a good thing because, like you said, long season, a team led by Coach Max always going to be prepared. And it's a long season. They have a while to put together a kind of a good product. And Dallas Baptist is a great team. Coach Max said before the season that's going to be one of their hardest matchups. So you can't get too down on this. It's a long season, but there's room for improvement probably everywhere.
Yeah, and the game where FAU did go scoreless for 7 straight innings was the Friday matchup, which I was at, and it was a very rough night for the Owls. They just couldn't get anything going, and yeah, it's very unfortunate that they couldn't get a game. Their closest being was on Sunday night, where it was a Sunday afternoon where they lost 3-2. Like easily their best performance in that series, but they just couldn't get it done as they got swept.
And I don't mean to cut you off, Rich, but it was kind of the same thing that game too. I think like, even I want to say it was the bottom of the ninth, and they had runners on with like the kind of opportunity to score, and they rolled into a double play. They had opportunities in several of the games. They just kind of didn't take advantage of them. If that makes sense.
Right. Like FAU has to be more opportunistic with when they have runners on base and just putting the hits where they need to be. Like it doesn't have to be home runs all the time because it's very hard to do that. But just getting those hits to areas where it's going to be harder for the opposing fielding team to like get those balls and try to get the runners out. Just make it difficult for them. That's all FAU really needs to do when they're up to bat, and they can really start doing that against Miami tomorrow night. And then after that, they head on to the road against Western Kentucky and Bowling Green from April 21st, Friday at 7 p.m., all the way to Sunday, April 23rd to 2 p.m. So they will have interesting road series against Western Kentucky. It's just a matter of if they have the momentum following the Miami game. It will really depend on how they play against Miami that will propel them to be much better going into the series against Western Kentucky. But we'll see, because so far the season for FAU has been really up and down, with Shanuel being the shining star of the show. It's been the Nolan Shanuel show, and I've been really happy to see him play this season. He's an absolute stud, and he's definitely gonna get eyes on him when he goes to the MLB draft this year. So it will definitely be something to watch. But at the moment, FAU really needs to pick up some momentum and just really get things going. With that will be our time with FAU baseball. For our last section with FAU sports, it's FAU spring football. That recently came to a close this Saturday. After 5 weeks of spring practice, FAU football had their spring game this past Saturday afternoon. Me and Zach were able to be a part of it, and we saw the red team, the white team duke it out for FAU, with the red team being very successful in a huge blowout where the red team just dominated, especially with Daniel Richardson putting up a pretty good show where he'll most likely be the number one quarterback unless FU finds another great QB in the transfer portal. So it's still yet to be determined how good this team will be heading into the fall. But this spring game is pretty much a little small sample size of what you could see of how FU could really look like under Tom Herman's system. So, Zach, what are your thoughts on how the spring game turned out from your end?
Yeah, I was very impressed with the offensive play calling. I thought Herman's kind of pro style offense he brought over worked extremely well for these guys. They were able to adapt to the system um, fundamentally well. It seemed like they were very composed in their play scheme and the plays that they were calling. One of my biggest takeaways that I wish I would have asked in the post-game press conference was if Herman had kind of put an exclamation point on ball security and discipline, because it just seemed it's so used to seeing our spring game just go with so few penalties. And maybe they were just turning a blind eye to it just because it's a spring game, but it just seemed that they were playing very clean football overall. Outside of that one fumble we had in the end zone, overall that they were just playing extremely clean football. If you want to talk about the quarterback play, Richardson just made all the right plays. I think he had like one or two throws down the field where I was like, that was a great throw in the good coverage, but he did all the small things right, never panicked in the pocket, even when the pocket was collapsing. I know he doesn't have the threat of being like torn down, but at the same time, being able to maneuver through the pocket, able to keep himself clean and just deliberate throws and crucial second, third and longs. That's what separates good teams, is when they're able to kind of convert the crucial situations. And I thought they did that extremely well. Quarterbacks overall just did a great job. Ballard, the graduate transfer from Texas, he had that 2-minute drive where he completed like 6 passes in a row on his way to a touchdown drive. So, that was big on his part. Everyone just stepping up in that regard. And then the running back room. I mean, we probably alluded to that multiple times in the post-game press conference. Just running back by committee, there's not one guy. I mean, we do have like one or two guys that maybe carry the load in Cam and just because they've been here so long. And then maybe Lewis, who played extremely well, but, being able to follow their gaps, understand their assignment and taking care of the ball was just a huge part and what led to that scoring outburst there in the spring game. So, a lot of good to take away from. I was a little suspect with the defense in some regards, just because I saw the tight end able to slip into some coverages that may have been broken, or maybe that was just great play design. It's hard for me to tell up there in the press box without knowing the play sheet in my hand, but you build off these things. I'm sure they'll be right back out there at practice, figuring out how to fix the little things and, find the bits and pieces here and there. But, I'm really big on Tom Herman. I trust in what he can do. And he was more than confident in trying to build this winning culture here at FAU. And, with basketball leading the way, just follow in the footsteps. Easier said than done, but at the same time, you know what the expectation is, and you know why you were brought here. So just do what you have to do.
Yeah, no, I was kind of like thoroughly impressed with everything I saw from the spring game, and my kind of biggest takeaway was that some of like the position battles that I thought were just kind of like givens, kind of aren't. There was a bunch of guys that I think kind of stepped up really nicely in the spring game and made a name for themselves. Specifically, kind of the quarterbacks going into the spring. You had Tyreek Starks and Michael Johnson, who played a year behind Michael Johnson 3, Tyreek just the 1 behind N'Kosi Perry. So my kind of thought process was like they have that kind of little bit leg up, but Richardson really showed out. That was a nice stat line he ended the day with. Some of the videos I've seen were some really nice balls he threw. So I don't think even with that great performance, he by any standard like won the job. We're so far out from the season, but that kind of shows me that it's going to be a real position battle at quarterback throughout the offseason, because it kind of, no matter who you kind of go with, they're going to be generally inexperienced. But he really made put like kind of his name out there in that battle with the spring game. Whoever it does end up being, they're in a really great position. They have several returners at receiver, a kind of bell cow running back in Larry McCammon, which I'll get to in a second, in a new coaching staff. So there's not like the baggage and expectations of like taking over a kind of already like set team. So whoever it is, they're going to be in a good situation come fall. And then the running backs, kind of like you said, I thought is the same situation as quarterbacks after Larry McCammon's just 1,000-yard season last year, and then with him entering the transfer portal and coming back. Once he came back, I kind of thought of my thought process was like it's his job to lose, but there were a bunch of running backs that that looked good. I thought him himself, and then Kobe Stewart. I thought some of the things I've seen from him, I really liked. So it's good to see that we're gonna have some competition going into the kind of the off season, and I really kind of like how much Herman in the comments I seen post game uh, addressed like a culture change because my God, FAU football needed it after the past regime. So seeing him put so much emphasis on, like culture change, work ethic, consistency, things like that, it's kind of really refreshing to see. So everything that you kind of wanted to check, you can't really check that many boxes in your first spring, but everything that you really want to, we kind of saw. So I think it was a really good first spring for Herman and the football team. So I'm impressed.
Yeah, same here. And I'm like having gotten to be at like a good majority of these spring sessions, it's pretty clear that Tom Herman is implementing a culture where there are no excuses. You have to execute your plays and you just don't have a bad attitude. Just go out to the field and do your thing. Especially as you were told to do by the coaches, by Coach Herman and the rest of the coaching staff. Like, do your job and everything else will follow, especially if we're talking about winning games and just being the best player that you could actually be. That's what Tom Herman is preaching to these players. And the culture change is really being apparent with how this team is starting to come together. And while they will have a summer to really build together their roster because after the spring football, they do not really have so much to do until fall camp in August. So starting in August. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team really comes together, especially as they acquire more transfer guys and maybe a couple more recruits. So, but yeah, best of luck to them and great job to them for putting together a great spring football campaign. And with that, that will conclude our time with FU Sports. Now we head on to national sports, and we're going to start off with the NBA. The regular season has ended, and we're right now a few games into the first round of the NBA playoffs. While the first round's still a little too early to call, like some of the predictions, it's starting to really come together, especially when we look at Philadelphia and Brooklyn. Philadelphia has a 2-0 lead, and to me, I predicted a sweep, and right now it's on pace to look like that because Mikal Bridges can't do everything on the offensive side of the court for Brooklyn. Because Philadelphia, they have Joel Embiid, they have James Harden, they have Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris on some nights. So that offense from Philadelphia might be too much for Brooklyn, and especially with Brooklyn being too inconsistent on the offensive side of the floor, the offensive side of the court. Excuse me. Yeah. And then we have Sacramento and Golden State, which I think is a certified hood classic. With Draymond getting ejected for stomping out Sabonis, which is pretty much the controversy of last night. But Sacramento held on as they took 114 to 106 to have a 2-0 lead heading into Golden State for Game 3. So, guys, I want to know your thoughts on these two series, or mainly just one because we kind of know what is expected from Philadelphia and Brooklyn, and the other playoff series that have gone about so far this postseason.
Yeah, I'll just kind of give my quick rundown of every game. Sixers, you've hit every point. I just think they have more firepower to beat every other team. The Hawks don't even deserve to be in the playoffs the way the Celtics are kind of beating the brakes off them right now. It just doesn't even look competitive. Knicks and Cavs will be overall very competitive. I just think the Knicks have more scoring options available to them to kind of put it away. I think Donovan Mitchell's kind of doing a little too much for the Cavs, but he kind of has to, given with what they're doing there. So unfortunately for them, if I would have told you the Warriors were the team that had won 4 rings going into this series, you would think I'm crazy if you had not watched the past couple years, because the Kings are outclassing them. It's honestly making the Warriors look like the bit of an inexperienced team at this point. but that's my biggest surprise from that series. Lakers are making steady progress with the Grizzlies. I didn't realize Austin Reeves was the re-embodiment of Kobe Bryant when it comes to playoff basketball. Surprise for the Heat and taking away a game from the Bucks, but then again, Giannis was out, so can't really look too heavy into that. Suns are frauds. I will always say that. So just gonna leave that there. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then for the last two, Nuggets will probably clear, and then yeah, none really else outside of that.
Yeah, for looking at the Sixers, you guys kind of just covered it. It'll probably be a sweep. Maybe Brooklyn might steal a game. I don't think Brooklyn's terrible. I actually think they have a pretty good future ahead of them. It's just they're not matched up with the Sixers at all. Same kind of deal looking at like the Celtics series. I think it's just kind of theirs. I got for the Knicks and Cavaliers. I really don't want to like lean any real one way at the moment. I think it's more kind of evenly matched a little bit than people are giving them credit for. But the series that I do want to talk about, I think, is the Grizzlies and the Lakers. I think that game is such bad vibes for like the Grizzlies, just because I feel like LeBron and AD didn't like play. They didn't play bad, but I don't think like they played particularly well.
That's okay. They were great.
I like they like yeah. I think that kind of covers it. Like they I don't think they weren't great, and you still kind of got it handed to you a little bit. And no, Rui Hachimura is not going to go for 28 or 29, like every given night. Like that's kind of like the outlier. But when he's giving you 28, and then Austin Reeves is giving you 20, 22, whatever it was, and that's just they still have so much more depth behind that, and that's kind of just credit to how the Lakers kind of built themselves following the trade deadline. I kind of thought it was an easy pick to go with the Grizzlies before, but I really like how like the Lakers looked. Um, well, tonight we'll have a kind of a little more telling, like look at the series after tonight. But I really like the Lakers, and I also think this is really bad vibes for the Warriors. I think kind of just like the whole situation around like no matter how like Draymond, no matter how much you don't like him, Draymond is really important to that team, and not even like in a sense of basketball. Just he's like kind of like the lightning rod, even when he's like getting booed like that, and he's still hyping. That's Draymond. He's like the heart and heartbeat of that team. So no matter what happens with whatever that's just bad vibes for them. I don't think the Kings are just kind of roll them. I imagine Golden State they'll take one at home, maybe two, but very bad vibes for them. And like Zach said, they just look outclassed. They look like the younger, less experienced team, which couldn't be farther from the truth. Very bad vibes for them. But the Kings look real deal. We kind of talked about it, I think, the last time. They look playoff experience. You'd think they're like a team 5 rings and a bunch of playoff series under their belt. They look real deal. They're nothing fraud about them.
Yeah, as I look at the other playoff series, besides the Sixers potentially sweeping the Nets, Hawks Celtics. I knew the Celtics going up 30 in game one. Like, okay, this is going to be one of those series. So Celtics, I have them winning in 5. I think Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are good enough to get a game for Atlanta. But besides that, it's a gentleman's sweep. Nuggets and T-Wolves. If Minnesota plays the way they did in game one, they're getting swept. No question. 80 points is not going to cut it. And Cat, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, and Rudy Gobert, they have to be better. Even though they haven't really shown that throughout this whole entire course of the season because of their inconsistency as a unit. Because how poor the fit is, and the Nuggets just having a much better offense overall, it might be too much. It's probably going to be too much for Minnesota to overcome. So that's why I thought about it like that. And you are right, Cameron. The Knicks and Cavs, they're both balanced. They're quite even talent-wise. But for when it comes to predictions, I had the Knicks winning in 7. So, so yeah, them winning game 1 was a surprise to me. I thought Cleveland would take game 1 to start the series, but hey, it ain't a series until the road team wins, and the Knicks decide to be that road team to win the first game of the series. Clippers and Suns, I have the Clippers in 7, but hey, if the Clippers can end the series sooner than expected, I'll be good with that. And Russ, please shoot better and just continue that defense that you had on Devin Booker, because I want Devin Booker to get owned like he did in game 1.
He's such a crybaby. Like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but he's such like a crybaby. Like that play where he gets like the ball thrown off him by Russ while he's like trying to talk to the ref. Like, that's such like a crazy like first year bonehead mistake. Like, I'm so glad it happened to the Suns.
I think the one thing I'll take away from this Clippers Sun series is, why does Kawhi perform his best when he has no help? Like, I will never understand that. You'd expect Paul George to go down and the Clippers to struggle, but then he turned into like the Raptors run Kawhi. Like, I don't know if it's like, maybe they're just like, maybe having another star on that team takes away from how much he's allowed to do. Like, he's just in that echelon of playoff basketball ability, but it just seems like whenever he's just left out there on his own, he makes the most of what happens. And not to say he's alone, he has a good supporting cast around him, but leaving him without another star is the best thing you can do for Kawhi, because he seems to step up every single time. It's awesome to watch in the playoffs.
Right. We already talked about enough about Kings and Warriors. I have the Warriors in 6, so they'll have to win 4 straight for me to get that prediction right, but it's not looking good at the moment. Lakers and Grizzlies, I have the Lakers in 6. Hopefully John Morant's all right, especially with his shooting hand, because he did not look pretty good after that bad landing. But yeah, if the Lakers can keep that up, like not Rui Hachimura dropping 28, but overall just defending the way they have, Anthony Davis scoring more points than he did in game 1, LeBron just being consistent overall on both sides, and then Austin Reeves just being Austin Reeves, really. The Lakers can get this done pretty soon. But yeah, overall, it's been quite entertaining, and we'll just see how the rest of the playoffs go from here. With that, that'll be it for this episode of UPressPlay Sports. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, click the bell to keep up with notifications from us. Also, be sure to go on upressonline.com to keep up with news, sports, and more content alike. To follow us on Twitter, it's for me, at Rich26Pereira, for Cameron, at PrehistorCameron, and for Zach, at ZachWatts1_. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day.